during separate encounters. In one case, the deputy pulled the trigger, leaving the man with wounds that required parts of his tongue to be sewn back together. In one of the fatal confrontations, the man's mother said a deputy kneeled on her son's neck while he told them he couldn't breathe. Police and court records obtained by the AP show that several deputies who were accepted to the sheriff's office special response team, a tactical unit whose members received advanced training, were involved in each of the 4 encounters. In 3 of them, the heavily redacted documents don't indicate if they were serving in their normal capacity as deputies or as members of the unit. Let's put them up. Michael Corey Jenkins, one of the police shooting victims. Remember, we brought you this story. In Mississippi, the police shooting of Michael Corey Jenkins led the Justice Department to open, finally, a civil rights investigation into the sheriff's office. Jenkins said 6 white deputies burst into a home where he was visiting a friend. One put a gun to his mouth and fired. Jenkins' hospital records, parts of which he shared with AP, show he had a lacerated tongue and a broken jaw. In a notice of an upcoming lawsuit, attorneys for Jenkins and his friend, Eddie Terrell Parker, said on the night of January 24th, the deputies suddenly came in the home, proceeded to handcuff and beat him. They said the deputies stunned them with tasers repeatedly over roughly 90 minutes, and at one point forced them to lie on their backs as the deputies poured milk over their faces. There's more. Police say the raid was prompted by a report of drug activity at the home. Jenkins was charged with possessing between 2 to 10 grams of methamphetamine and aggravated assault on an officer. Parker was charged with 2 misdemeanors, possession of paraphernalia, and disorderly conduct. Jenkins and Parker say the raid came to a head when the deputy shot Jenkins through the mouth. He still has difficulty speaking and eating. Another black man, Carvis Johnson, alleged in a federal lawsuit filed in 2020 that the same county, a deputy placed a gun in his mouth during a 2019 drug bust. Johnson was not shot there. Rankin County, which has about 120 sheriff deputies serving, is roughly 160,000 people, is predominantly white, and just east of the state capital, Jackson, home of one of the highest percentages of black residents of any major U.S. city. We are glad to see that it is out of the bubble of local law enforcement. Sometimes that is the purpose of attempting to shine light on corruption. You got to get it outside of your local politics because you can get home cooked. All right? We'll bring you this as it develops, but I wanted to provide that highlight. The Department of Justice finally involved. Sharing thoughts.
What you're talking about is torture. And what you detailed reminds me of investigative journalism reports on Guantanamo Bay.
Yeah.
That's what it sounded like. It's horrific.
It's unbelievable. All right. I have a question for everybody because it is a question worth asking. What in the red state hell?
You can take a gun, shoot somebody in the face. It's not hard. Sometimes it might even be fun if they're a godless commie.
Now, what they're trying to do is sneak the COVID vaccine in your salads.
I hate math. Somebody say amen.
Donald Trump, if you can hear us, please, Donald Trump, please save me. Please save me, Donald Trump, please. I'm asking you. Please save me. Please save me. Please get these people away from me. In dear God's name, please stop these beautiful people.
President Trump, if you see this, please save us. I don't even see our American flag anymore. Biden's talking with some kind of crazy flag. This is America.
I promise you, they will tell you they are Christian evangelicals who obviously worship Donald Trump, praying to Trump. Okay, put the picture up full mass. Very interesting. Yes, they are praying to Trump. We found this. There are more videos. While there are skeptics about Trump's divine abilities, here is Trump hearing their prayer right here. Yes. That photo was actually captured by the same guy that took these pictures. What are they going to do when Donald Trump is in the pokey? Damn. All right, Sharon, those pictures are actually fake pictures that are done on the internet, but they look so damn real I had to use them.
Yeah, except the first one, Dr. Ritchie, it was a dead giveaway. Donald Trump, he's not that limber and can't get down like that. So I knew that one was a fake, okay? But this whole thing where these people done fell out at the mega church of Trump, MAGA mega church. Well, there's your chuckle. It gave me a chuckle.
There it is. All right, Sharon, always a pleasure having you on the program. Tell people how they can follow you. Check out your great work. Rebel
HQ. We'll be firing things up there, and at Sharon Reed Live across all platforms. I appreciate you, Doc, and thanks for enlightening all of us always.
Well, iron sharpens iron. Thank you for doing the same. All right. Remember, take care of yourself, take care of each other, take care of the planet. Remember, the truth is always indisputable.
Welcome into Unbossed. It is your girl, Adrienne Lawrence. I'm filling in for the great boss, Nina Turner. And since you are going to be here with me, please never forget to subscribe. Also, share the stream and send some love in the comments, because today we have a hell of a show for you. I'm talking about the alarming aftermath of yesterday's heinous mass shooting in Nashville at that Christian school, as well as the impending implosion of Israel's right-wing government. And also later in the show, we are going to be talking about some sneaky tactics the GOP are executing in order to quiet and silence your vote. And to help me dissect all of this is the great TYT contributor, Jordan Newell. Jordan, what's up?
Hey, Adrienne, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being here. And as I understand, this is our first time collaborating together. So I am looking forward to getting all of your insight, and I know that all the viewers are as well. All right, let's go ahead and get things started out in Nashville. Yep, because there we just had a uniquely American and largely preventable tragedy. It struck again another mass shooting, and this time it was at a Christian elementary school in Nashville, Tennessee. And the Metro Nashville Police Department, well, they released this footage, which we are gonna start to show you here. That really shows the gravity of yesterday's attack in terms of the hunt that was going on by the shooter there. That is the shooter entering what is known as the Govt school. The Govt school happens to also be a church on the same campus. It is a Christian school. And as we understand, the individual who was orchestrating this attack essentially was going through the building, searching for individuals with several firearms. As we understand, an assault rifle, at least 2 of those, and a handgun. This was very much a coordinated and orchestrated attack by this individual at an elementary school where kids are in session. There is nothing we can do or say, well, that's according to the GOP, but we'll get to that. What we do know so far is that this attack was orchestrated by an individual who has been identified as 28-year-old Aiden Hale. The individual was born Audrey Elizabeth Hale, which why you will also hear that name. Now, Hale took the lives of 6 people, including 3 children at the elementary school where Hale was once a student. And in the aftermath of that shooting, well, police also released this body cam footage of the tense moments before they entered the school and took Hale down.
Right here. It's locked.
Go. Hit that stair. Hit the stairs. Go stairs, go.
Go.
Go. One down. Keep pushing. Go. Shots fired, move. Right. Push to the LPVO, go right.
That was the officers there as they were embarking upon Hale. Now we cut right before the police shot them and took them down. Now we know that the officers who ended up taking down Hale, that's Officer Rex Egelbert, a 4-year veteran of the force. I believe we have pictures of them up here, as well as Officer Michael Colazzo, a 9-year veteran, and they acted very swiftly. I know they're still investigating everything that's going on. I'm sure we'll get a full report, but from what I have seen, at least what's circulating on the internet with the body cam footage, it seems like these people did not in any way hesitate as it concerned taking the shooter down. And unfortunately, it was not before Hale took out several children, including also adults as well, 6 people in total. 3 again were children, this per the Independent. The victims, 9-year-olds Evelyn Dykos, Haley Scruggs, and William Kinney. 61-year-old Cynthia Peak, 60-year-old Catherine Kuntz, and 61-year-old Michael Hill. And we do have pictures of them. Shannon Watts, the founder of Moms Demand, who fights to fight against gun access and these restrictions that are too lax, to put out these pictures. This is Haley Scruggs, one of the 3 children that was slain in the mass school shooting in Nashville, 9 years old. Scruggs' father is a senior pastor at Covenant Presbyterian Church. This next photo here is Catherine Kuntz. This individual also mentioned, head of Covenant School. The next photo here we have is of Evelyn Dykos, who is 9 years old. If we want to go ahead and turn to her photo. And it looks like we're having some issues getting it up there, but also, and then there was Mike Hill. And so if we get those photos later, we will show them to you. But these individuals They were innocent without a doubt. And I know that they had just started with this investigation of figuring out why this is happening. But from the headlines we are seeing so far, we know that police are now saying that the attack was targeted. And also that the Metro Nashville Police Department also told CBS News this: we have a manifesto. We have some writings that we're going over that pertain to this date, the actual incident. We have a map drawn out of how this was all going to take place. Once again, Hale very much coordinated this attack on their former school. And now you have 6 people dead, including 3 small children. It seems like we are on repeat. All we see is mass shootings, children dying, and we've seen it for decades now, and nothing seems to be getting done. Jordan.
It's frustrating. It's heartbreaking. At some point yesterday, I just hit a wall and had to check out, because this isn't a normal thing that we should have to look at, think about, analyze, comment on. I mean, these are children and random adults being targeted and killed. This isn't something that happens at this scale anywhere else in the world. But here we have to deal with this on a daily basis, and we look to our elected leaders to do something about it, because again, this is a uniquely American problem. And they throw up their hands, they say there's nothing we can do, or it would infringe on people's rights. And meanwhile, they just take, hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars in some cases over the course of their career from the NRA and the gun lobby. We don't have to accept this premise where this is something we have to live with, where we have to worry about our friends, our loved ones, our kids not coming home one day. This is purely and uniquely American, and action on this is long overdue.
Absolutely, it is long overdue, and it is infuriating. And you would also like to think that people are tired, that citizens, that voters are tired. But unfortunately, we see them continue to put people in office who are not willing to institute change. And when it comes to people and how they feel, especially parents, well, I want you to see this parent here who was not going to let Fox News have this live hit yesterday in Nashville outside of the school. Watch this.
Aren't you guys tired of covering this? Aren't you guys tired of being here and having to cover all of these mass shootings? I'm from Highland Park. Family vacation with my son, visiting my sister-in-law. I have been lobbying in DC since we survived a mass shooting in July. I have met with over 130 lawmakers. How is this still happening? How are our children still dying, and why are we failing them? Gun violence is the #1 killer of children and teens. It has overtaken cars. Assault weapons are contributing to the border crisis and fentanyl. We are arming cartels with our guns and our loose gun laws. And these shootings and these mass shootings will continue to happen until our lawmakers step up and pass gun safety legislation.
And she is absolutely right. Until there is change, there will be no change. But unfortunately, it seems that those in leadership are not necessarily advancing when it comes to the conversation of what change can be had in terms of people actually taking action. So we have the right and the left still doing this little dance. And we saw that yesterday when Joe Biden took to the podium to talk a little bit about what he would like in terms of a call to action.
So I call on Congress again to pass my assault weapons ban. It's about time that we begin to make some more progress, but there's more to learn. But I just wanted to send my concern and hearts out to so many parents.
Yes, lots of thoughts and prayers out there. That's what we get from a number of politicians. And the question is, what would actually be done if you used all the power in your arsenal, so to speak? And the thing is that I know that Biden is also at the mic again today, begging for change. But my God, there just has to be something far more. Jordan.
Absolutely. There was an interview I saw about a year and a half ago. There was a shooting at a Washington Nationals game, and the local news interviewed a father and his young daughter who might have been around 8 or 9, about what it was like being in that stadium when somebody opened fire. And she said, "Oh, it's okay. This isn't the first shooting that I've been through." And I want people to think about that. When you hear clips like that, and this mother who interrupted the Fox stand-up, who just last year survived the Highland Park, Illinois shooting, how insane it is that we're at the point where the gun violence problem in this country has gotten so bad that people are surviving multiple mass shootings. This was the 135th, I think, mass shooting so far this year. And yesterday was the 86th day of the year. We can't stand idly by as this continues to happen, as people continue to be killed in cold blood because the gun lobby has a stranglehold over Congress. It's time for people to finally stand up to this issue, to rebuke this corporate and lobbyist cash, and actually take action. And it's maddening when you see people like members of Congress from Tennessee who admit this is bad, but we're not going to solve the problem. It shows where their loyalties lie, and it's not with their constituents.
No, it's not with their constituents, and it's not with humanity as far as I'm concerned. They are watching individuals kill themselves. They're watching individuals die. They're watching our children die, and they are completely okay with sitting and doing nothing but lining their coffers. And that seems to definitely be something that the Republicans have no problem simply saying out loud at this point. But of course, they'll use any other justification possible. This here is Republican Representative Tim Burchett, who happens to be a representative for Tennessee. And this is what he had to say after yesterday's shooting.
Precious little kids lost their lives, and I believe 3 adults, I believe it. And the shooter, of course, lost their life too. So it's a horrible, horrible situation. And we're not gonna fix it. Criminals are gonna be criminals. And my daddy fought in the Second World War, fought in the Pacific, fought the Japanese, and he told me, he said, buddy, he said, if somebody wants to take you out and doesn't mind losing their life, there's not a whole heck of a lot you can do about it.
That would seem to be very much a lie, because I'm guessing that the individual can't take you and other people out as easily if they're not operating with an assault rifle. Come on, if somebody had a knife, they're gonna have to work a hell of a lot harder to take 6 lives before being taken down than if they had some kind of semi-automatic weapon, shall we say. It's completely and totally ludicrous. And of course, this is House Majority Leader Steve Scalise, who had to throw in his 2 cents.
Yeah, the first thing in any kind of tragedy I do is, as I pray for the victims, pray for their families. I really get angry when I see people trying to politicize it for their own personal agenda, especially when we don't even know the facts.
He was not put in office to pray, I assure you. He was put in office to pass laws to protect we the people. But no, the way they want to go about it is don't politicize it. It's time to pray, as opposed to actually to put in some actions. It's completely disturbing to me that people continue to vote these individuals in office, despite the fact that they are doing absolutely nothing while our children are being murdered. Jordan, am I off base here?
No, not at all. This seems like common sense. We shouldn't have to live with this problem. And for Steve Scalise, who was shot by somebody, that's I think the most jarring thing about his reaction. Some lunatic shot him, and he still turns around and says, "Oh, we shouldn't do anything about the problem." He's okay with it. It's that NRA money must be great. Keeps them in power. They don't have to do anything about it. They wash their hands of it. They sleep at night, I guess. I don't know how. I don't know what solution there is, because these people who are hell-bent on allowing this problem to continue to fester, because they get campaign contributions from the NRA, from the gun manufacturers, from the lobbyists. I don't know. I don't know what we can do, and I want to be supportive of any Democratic efforts to rein in this problem and the proliferation of firearms in this country. But until we tackle the problem of money in politics, nothing's really going to change. So we could pay lip service to the issue, we can feel bad, and then tomorrow's a new day with another mass shooting. I feel very cynical on it, because we've all watched this problem grow and develop into this really cancerous rot in this country, and nothing's changed.
Nope. And it's just, you become desensitized to it at a certain point. But I can definitely tell you that yesterday's situation really kept people from saying that, well, we need to put God back in schools, because God was clearly there if this was a Christian establishment. And yet still mass shootings were also on the premises. So we need to realize that this is a matter of guns, because people want to deflect to other issues. And speaking of other issues, unfortunately, people are also using this particular situation to advance their transphobia. The individual Hale, who I mentioned, went by Aiden, but was born identifying as a woman, but has since identified as a man. People are using that really to further and advance their transphobic agenda that we have seen pop up across the country with the anti-LGBTQ sentiment. And so, of course, the vast majority of the commentary happened to come out of the Republican end as they are jumping on this situation, again, to demonize trans folks. Like, check this out here with Josh Hawley's tweet, basically stating that the shooter, or the shooting of the situation here, that it needs to be investigated as a hate crime. Yeah, a hate crime in particular. The thing is the investigation isn't where it is yet. And so to go ahead and advance this to suggest that it's the us versus them narrative of trans versus cis is absolutely disgusting. Also, of course, Don Jr. had to get in his thoughts, and he tweeted this. Mothers at PTA meetings who didn't want their children indoctrinated in schools were labeled domestic terrorists by our FBI and DOJ. So far, nothing about that after a trans sociopath who wrote, "You mess with our kids, we kill your kids," in his manifesto before killing 6 people. That is completely and totally, again, speculative, completely unfounded, and just transphobic. That's so in line with Trump Jr.'s nonsense. And also Jack Posobiec tweeting, the trans shooter left a manifesto, not a suicide note. And it isn't hard to infer the message intended. You mess with our kids, we will kill your kids. Textbook act of domestic terrorism. Again, that is a right-wing narrative that has been circulating around social media, but there is no basis to it. I'm sure the police will tell us more information, but as of right now, there is no reason to use this shooting as a way to advance transphobia. It's not trans or any kind of gender identity or even any kind of sexual identity that is taking the lives of children. That is the #1 reason children are dying in the United States. No, it is the prevalence of guns and the lack of gun reform. Again, for those in the back, it is a lack of gun reform. There are not individuals out there targeting your children that are the problem. Again, gun reform. Hear it. Jordan, any last thoughts?
The right-wing push and narrative around this shooting is a total distraction, and I would encourage people not to take the bait. Because what isn't the issue here is their identity or their orientation or whatever. Who cares? If Republicans really cared about that, they would have spent the last few years bemoaning the 98% of mass shootings that were carried out by white cis men. But they haven't, because this feeds into their larger anti-trans narrative. But here's the thing, and here's how you can distinguish this scenario from all of the other scenarios that they fear-mongered over regarding trans people. Nobody's died at any of these other situations. They haven't died at drag queen story hours or simply from trans people existing. The distinguishing factor here is that this person had an assault rifle. That's it. The problem is guns, and what they're trying to do is distract people from the real issue because they're paid to.
Absolutely, and we know how the right loves to get their coins. They love to collect them, even if it means that they are going to be upping a body count now more in the future, just because they, again, really enjoy getting that money from the NRA. We will have more for you when we get back.
Every day, the Young Turks delivers 2 hours of solid, fact-based, timely news and progressive commentary on all the day's most important stories. We keep our viewers informed while also providing perspective and insight on the news we cover, so you understand not only what's happening, but also what's happening behind the scenes, the stories behind the stories.
We play musical chairs and put these children in one awful detention facility to the next. That's what's happening at the border.
The things that got him banned, he's still spreading. So presumably, I think it's reasonable to say that if you allow him back on the website, he's going to do it again.
Any legal voter that we deem not willing to vote for my side shouldn't vote because it'll replace me that's supposed to vote for my side. That's not how voting works. That's not how democracy works.
And while many people following today's political news can get discouraged about the direction of the nation and the world, that's not us. At TYT, we're genuinely optimistic about the future, and with good reason. Today, wide majorities of Americans agree with our progressive stances on issues ranging from healthcare and education to climate, immigration, and wages. The rising generation of young people are also overwhelmingly progressive in their political beliefs and policy objectives, and they're increasingly flexing their muscle as voters and activists to demand change from our elected officials. The traditional mainstream media is mostly AWOL. They, along with the government and many other cherished institutions, have been captured by corporate interests. Audiences sense that they're not getting the whole story or even the truth from once trusted outlets, whether broadcasting cable TV news networks or national newspapers and magazines. The antidote is the Young Turks. Unlike mainstream corporate outlets, we're not beholden to corporate advertisers, the defense contractors, to Wall Street, or to Big Pharma, and we don't carry water for the Republican or Democratic parties. So watch us Monday to Friday at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific, and join the thousands of progressives around the globe who tune in every day for TYT's unmatched, award-winning content and see what it's like to experience a news organization that only answers to you.
I don't.
Welcome back to Unbossed. It is Adrienne Lawrence filling in for the great Nina Turner. To the extent I can, I hope you all are out there following along on the live stream, and I hope you'll consider getting a membership. That's right, because memberships, well, they protect TYT's ability to report on things like corruption, politics, crime, the things mainstream media will not cover. We have conversations on without a doubt, and of course, we provide it to you in a progressive lens. So support our work at tyt.com/join, and let's make positive change happen together. Also, don't forget the watch list. That's right. After you watch Unbossed with Nina Turner, make sure you stay tuned for the watch list. Derek Jackson will share his takes on the stories. I'm talking news, politics, culture, current events, sports, and maybe even a few police chases. We'll have to wait and see. But I need you to subscribe to the watch list and watch live daily, 5 Eastern, 2 Pacific at youtube.com/watchlisttyt. And also, for your ears, I got some love. That's right, because Unbossed Live, check it out for the full episode by checking out our podcast. That's listen to Unbossed on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your downloads. Also, it'd be great if you rated our show with 5 stars because, hey, why not? I think we are 5 stars. And as far as what everyone out there is saying, those stars of the TYT members, well, Vicky says, sometimes I think we should just shut down the economy, school workers and students, office workers, retail, take a couple days off while our legislators panic and do something before their donors lose money when no one is working or spending money. Yes, I believe they might call that one big worker strike, and I am here for it. That's right, because they should be working for us, last I checked. And also for Twitch, well, Michael says the aftermath of the shooting is nothing is gonna change. I fear you are correct. Hunger Games says at least these cops weren't cowards like the Uvalde cops. I know, I was thinking the same thing. They really went up in there and they flexed something fierce. So my hat is off to them. I know we often give police, well, we call out the bad ones, but my God, these ones were good at what they did. I'm very grateful for their courage and their work. Madrid said Republicans act like there is no point doing anything unless you can eliminate all gun violence at once with a single move. Exactly, it's just a red herring. Oh, and also thank you so much for subscribing for 9 months, Leanna, much appreciated. Last notes, well, the YouTube super chat, you don't like my music, says a good guy with a gun is a bad guy with a gun waiting to happen. Exactly, because that's pretty much what we're talking about here. The moment the circumstances change, a lot of people don't recognize that, as you noted, a good guy with a gun could become a bad guy. And there is definitely a bad guy out there, which I think we've kind of known that they've been in existence for a bit. And I'm talking about Benjamin Netanyahu. That is the prime minister of Israel, because we have heard from the people there and it's been absolute chaos. And here's my breakdown at Overruled. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu fired his defense minister over the weekend for objecting to his plan to overhaul the court system, something that the prime minister seeks to do so that he can hopefully evade pending corruption charges against him. But the defense minister didn't object for ethical reasons. He simply knew Netanyahu's plan to overhaul the courts threatened Israel's stability. Yes, that's right. There are people pushing back, and some are, operating with the best of intentions, and the others simply realize it wouldn't happen. But of course, there are people out there who just aren't having it either way, and that's the nearly 1 million Israelis who took to the streets in protest, and we have some footage here. Yeah, that's right. Over the last few days, Israelis have been using their voice to challenge this religious nationalist government there in Israel. And there are many there who see what's going on with Netanyahu and really see this as an attempted power grab as he's trying to reshape Israeli society in a way that's going to disadvantage them, that is going to uplift individuals who are looking more for that nationalistic Israeli take, as opposed to maybe bringing people together and also not using their power to completely and totally upend the court system. Here's more about the overhaul of the courts per CNN. At its core, the judicial overhaul would give the Israeli parliament, the Knesset, and therefore the parties in power more control over Israel's judiciary. From how judges are selected to what laws the Supreme Court can rule on, to even giving Parliament power to overturn Supreme Court decisions. The changes would be the most significant shakeups to Israel's judiciary since its founding in 1948. Another significant element of the changes is known as the override clause, which would give the Israeli parliament the power to pass laws previously ruled invalid by the court, essentially overriding Supreme Court decisions. The thing a lot of people don't realize about Israel is that it does not have a constitution like the United States at all. So there aren't things mapped out in terms of true separation of powers, which is what is putting Netanyahu in a position where he can potentially upend the entire court system and the judiciary, so he will have more power and pretty much looking to evade conviction since he's facing those corruption charges. Well, another change that benefits Netanyahu in his attempted move is another bill now voted through makes it more difficult for a sitting prime minister to be declared unfit for office, restricting the reasons to physically or mentally incapacity and requiring either the prime minister themselves or 2/3 of the cabinet to vote for such a declaration. There is a lot going on there in Israel, and it is quite complicated. But the thing that is a very basic, clear reality is the fact that we have someone who is operating similar to Trump, tried to take over the court so they could avoid facing any kind of consequences for their actions. And the thing is, when it comes to Israel, however, it's not just the Israeli people that are throwing their weight behind opposing Netanyahu's right-wing transition. This Israeli journalist and activist, Haggai Matar, breaks it down.
The army is basically collapsing. The central and most important units that sustain Israel's Air Force and intelligence corps are basically filled with thousands of people who are saying that they will refuse to continue service or their reserve service if the legal overhaul goes through.
Right. Their military is not about it. Law enforcement has pulled back. They are not going to support this overhaul of the government. They are highly, highly unionized in Israel, big on unions, and they shut down the airport. We saw in France where individuals shut down in terms of the garbage disposal, trash maintenance. That is pretty much what was going on in Israel, of course, until recently, which we will have the updates. But I want to pause right now and get the temperature from you, Jordan. What's your outlook?
But this is yet another example of why the U.S. should reevaluate its alliance with Israel. The U.S. in its foreign policy always claims to prioritize democracy, the rights of the individual, the rights of people, and purportedly, supporting democracy around the world. And time again, throughout all these different countries, our allies have shown they are anything but democratic. Typically, our alliances around the world are for militaristic reasons. And criticism of our alliance with Israel or how the Israeli government operates, specifically in relation to Palestinians and them being deprived of their rights and autonomy, has been dismissed or framed as anti-Semitic, and that is untrue. So what we need to do here is take a serious look at our relationship and alliance with Israel, because what they're showing is they don't really have, this current government does not truly value democracy in their society. And we've seen that in how they treat Palestinians and how this current government is operating. Unfortunately, the influence that the Israeli lobby has here, it's very similar and analogous to how the NRA operates. They have, bought the support of a ton of politicians throughout both parties in supporting Israel unilaterally. And again, it all comes back to the money in politics. AIPAC is a hugely influential bipartisan force in American politics. And until we do something about it, you're going to have people who just act like we have to be deferential to whatever the Israeli government does, no matter who it harms.
And the thing is that our society is not necessarily backing down or pushing back in terms of Israel and getting them to act right, particularly as it concerns the Palestinians. As I mentioned, the lack of a constitution. The thing is that when Israel was declared and created in 1948, it said it was going to develop a constitution so it could set up the separation of powers and prevent things like we're seeing with Netanyahu. Unfortunately, as I understand it, they did not do that at that point in time, in part because they didn't want to have to limit the state's power such that they would have to treat everyone in an equitable way, and it would have made them harder of a situation for them to carry out the settler colonial project that they have going in Palestine. That is, as many people have noted, a human rights violation, and that continues to persist with the apartheid actions there. And the thing is that those individuals taking to the streets aren't necessarily objecting to the treatment and the rights for Palestinians in any way. It's the concerns of what Netanyahu would do that would upend what they have going that would benefit them. It is a very powerful thing, but we do have to note that that judicial overhaul was just paused because it's a matter of now recognizing that Netanyahu cannot get away with it. And as a result of that, unfortunately, and having the Minister of Defense being removed, as this Israeli Palestinian journalist noted in a letter saying, I hate to burst everybody's bubble, but Netanyahu is merely postponing his showdown by a month and has signed a document granting Itamar Ben-Gvir, a convicted terror criminal, a private militia. Yes, that's Itamar Ben-Gvir is the Minister of National Security. And it appears that Netanyahu has given him a right to have his own militia or his own small private military. And Ben-Gvir is very, very problematic. And this is also what we know from the Times of Israel staff. Ben-Gvir circulated a letter to media outlets dated Monday and signed by Netanyahu, in which the prime minister vowed to raise the issue of forming such a body within the National Security Ministry in the upcoming cabinet meeting this Sunday. Now, the former Israeli police chief blasted this move, calling it dangerous and a distinct characteristic of turning Israel into a dictatorship. You cannot have an operational force that doesn't report to the police commissioner. Yeah, with good reason. It seems like Netanyahu has now given the power to this individual, Itamar Ben-Gvir, who again is a war criminal, but also is known for trying to eliminate Palestinians. And that has been something that has been on his agenda. This is very scary in terms of the people there and what is going to happen to them if he is allowed to form his own military, especially given what's going on right now in terms of the divisive nature of the country. Any last words on this, Jordan?
Can't help but draw parallels to what Texas Republicans want to do. They want to allow militias to operate on the border free from any oversight or enforcement by the police or the government, and address, handle, which would ultimately mean killing, harming, injuring immigrants. When you enable people to operate outside of any oversight or scrutiny, and they are militarized, the result is going to be, at best, mass murder, and unfortunately, potentially, ethnic cleansing. And we've already seen the bloodlust from some of these people in the Israeli government toward Palestinians. Throwing in a militia that is free from oversight essentially guarantees that more blood will be spilled. And I can't help but think and sympathize with Palestinians right now. It's horrifying.
Yes, indeed, it is very horrifying. And as they sit back and watch and wonder what's going to happen, they remain in a very vulnerable position. And so we need to keep an eye out for them, Palestinians on both sides of the border, without a doubt. And speaking of the border, well, there was a horrific situation at the US-Mexico border last night. Nearly 40 migrants weren't declared dead, or they were declared dead this morning after a fire broke out overnight. Mexican president, he said that the fire was sparked by migrants in protest of their looming deportation. President Lopez also added that this was one of the deadliest events ever at a Mexican immigration lockup. More about the situation from AP. Hours after the fire broke out late Monday, rows of bodies were laid out under shimmery silver sheets outside of the facility in Ciudad Juarez, which is across from El Paso, Texas, and a major crossing point for migrants. Ambulances, firefighters, and vans from the morgue swarmed the scene. Now, at the time of the blaze, 68 men from Central and South America were being held at that facility. Now, 28 of the dead are Guatemalan citizens. Also, those injured and deceased from the fires were from Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador, Venezuela, Colombia, Ecuador. Carrie Talbot, deputy director of the Immigration Hub, stated this on Twitter this morning. 39 people dead at the US border in a Mexican detention center. The US bears responsibility for pushing these migrants back into Mexico to face unsafe conditions. Now, in December, a Trump-appointed federal judge had blocked President Joe Biden's attempt to end the policy, which rights groups say is illegal. Now, meanwhile, Biden has been under heavy criticism from advocates for his asylum proposals. And I know now we also recently met with Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister of Canada, to talk about how we are going to handle a lot of the migrants and those seeking asylum. And the thing is that what the US is doing, it's not working. Yes, you have individuals losing their lives. These individuals have done nothing wrong. They are migrants. They are seeking help. They are not criminals like the right would like you to think. These are individuals who are in a very vulnerable position and seeking help from a number of the countries we put in compromising positions. So it just seems we need to get our stuff together because we are not upholding this whole idea that the Americans are focused on humanity. Jordan.
You also have to recognize the role the US has played over the past several decades in destabilizing these countries that has led to the influx of immigrants trying to come to this country. We can't ignore that in these conversations, and unfortunately our elected leaders never want to acknowledge that. They don't want to acknowledge how the CIA operated throughout South and Latin America for decades, overthrowing democratically elected leaders, assassinating them, funding and arming death squads and militias, and the proliferation of firearms from this country that led to mass death. We have to center that in this conversation. That's why people are leaving their homes and trying to seek refuge here. And in 2020, Biden ran on a campaign that largely tried to distinguish himself from Trump on immigration. And over the past few years, in part because of legal decisions like you're talking about, but also through their own accord, have slowly crept back to some of the policies that they previously admonished. If we want to create a world that truly lives up to what we all want the American ideal to be, we actually need to chart a new and different course on immigration. Welcome people here. You want this to be this beacon of light for people around the world to come to and create a better life? Then live up to it, show it, prove it. But putting people in cages, having them remain in Mexico, turning away asylum seekers, it does anything but, and it undercuts this idealist premise of what America should be.
Absolutely. As far as I'm concerned, it really just seems that hypocrisy is the official language of the United States. But those are just my thoughts. And we will have more thoughts when we get back from this break.
Our system is inherently rigged against the will of the people.
They have 50% of the vote, and in a democracy, they should have 50% of the seats.
But if you live in an insanely gerrymandered district, your vote functionally doesn't matter.
We drew the map in a way that even though we get 50% of the vote, we're gonna get 13 out of the 18 seats.
You don't actually have the ability to translate the will of the voters in your area into actual government policy.
They should not be allowed to gerrymander these districts. We should actually have a democracy.
I've been honest with him. Like, yeah, I was upset with you and I shouldn't have done it. But instead I was like, I'm just trying to protect my engagement ring.
At TYT, our mission is to boldly pursue truth, challenge the establishment, and drive positive change. At a time when corporate capture of our media, our government, and our politics is nearly absolute, everyday working people need a champion to fight for them and to push back against the powerful interests that threaten our democracy itself. At TYT, we're proudly progressive and call out corruption and duplicity wherever we see it, from Republicans, Democrats, or anyone else. And unlike mainstream news media outlets, we're not beholden to corporate advertisers, to defense contractors, to Wall Street, or to Big Pharma. We only have to answer to our audience, and for nearly 2 decades, we've accomplished that by delivering honest, timely, and insightful perspectives on the day's news without fear or favor or concern for whose toes we might step on or which powerful elites we might offend. And while we're super serious about the news, we also manage to do it in a way that is fun and lighthearted. We can do this together and serve our audience, and yes, have fun doing it.
Yes, welcome back to MBoss. It is Adrienne Lawrence filling in for the great Nina Turner. And once again, please definitely get your membership on. That's right, because when you sign up for membership, you're protecting TYT's ability to report on all of the deets that the mainstream media doesn't want to discuss or doesn't want you to know. So support our network at tyt.com/join, and let's make some positive change together. Also, definitely make sure you follow the podcast. That's right, Unbossed Live. You can catch the full episodes by checking out the podcast on Apple Podcasts, wherever you get it. That's right. And also, please hit it up with that 5-star rating. And, well, Speed Racer of a TYT member says Netanyahu needs to go straight to jail as Trump should here, without a doubt. Also on Twitch, Melanie says the rich around the world are trying to force fascism on us, and even most countries that do not have do have social safety nets are being fought and chipped away slowly like ours was. Absolutely. Also, Orlando YouTube super chat saying, Adrienne, I love your work, girl. Thanks so much. I'm always trying to get out the message to y'all, so I really appreciate those of you who are listening. And you want to hear something bad? Well, you know, the GOP is at it again as it concerns trying to cut back our opportunities and rights as it concerns voting. So with that 2024 election around the corner, well, yeah, the GOP states are up to it again in terms of pressing voter ID rules. And the effects of it are somewhat unclear, but apparently right now it seems Ohio is leading the charge. This per the AP. As Ohio's primary approach is a strict new photo ID requirement is stirring concerns for military veterans and out-of-state college students in Amish communities and among older voters. Ruth Kohaki is among those caught up in the confusion over Ohio's law, which is going into effect this year. The retired nurse from Cincinnati gave up her driver's license and her car in 2019. Now at 82, she thought she might never have to set foot in another state license agency. But Ohio now requires an unexpired photo ID in order for someone to vote, and she'll have to get that at the Bureau of Motor Vehicles. The law adds passports as valid ID, but eliminates non-photo documentation such as a bank statement, government check, or utility bill for registration and in-person voting. Military IDs are no longer acceptable when registering to vote. Can you imagine how much stress this is putting on older individuals, also individuals in the military, and as mentioned, those in Amish counties, because for you to have to go to the DMV to get that, and also the documentation that you need, get out of here. Most people don't know where their birth certificates are, social security numbers, all of those things that are generally required for a photo ID. Now you have this population of individuals who have to go get that if they want to participate and have their voices heard as members of our community. That's not okay. And it's also not okay that this is impacting students at Ohio State University in particular. They've been advised, or their university itself has advised it's roughly 16,000 out-of-state students against voting in person on election day for fear that obtaining the necessary state ID card would invalidate their driver's license in their home state and disrupt their financial aid and residency status. The school suggests such students casting Ohio ballots do so by mail. Wow, that is a lot in terms of suggesting that students not vote by saying, hey, it's tethered to your financial aid. That sounds like some hint voter suppression to my knowledge. But of course, Ohio isn't alone in trying to push these suppression laws. Of the 35 states that request or require a photo ID to vote, Ohio is now the 9th Republican-controlled state to move to a strict law allowing few to no alternatives, according to the National Conference of State Legislatures. The number of states where voters face strict photo ID requirements is poised to rise in the coming months. The GOP continues to push the election integrity, citing voter fraud, even though we know that's all bunk. Jordan, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, citing election fraud is ridiculous because there are maybe a handful of cases every cycle. And what they're ultimately trying to do here, especially when we're talking about college students and the difficulties this creates for college students, is to cut back on what we have seen over the past 2 cycles. And it is that Gen Z, or now in college or approaching college, are way more liberal than their predecessor generations. So that created this scenario where Biden, even somewhat unpopular in a really tough midterm climate, Democrats hung on to the Senate, expanded their majority in the Senate. Republicans really underperformed in the House too, and you could thank young voters. So this is what the GOP is going to try to do around the country. How do we make it as difficult as possible for young people to vote? And this is just one way, and we're going to see it replicated throughout red states around the country.
Absolutely, without a doubt. They do not want young people using their voices in any form or fashion, in part because they do not align with the old school draconian ways of the right. And it's so incredibly disheartening because these people are paying taxes, they are contributing to Ohio, yet so many of them seem to not be able to necessarily vote based on this new structure that is put in place in Ohio that could, as they say, jeopardize their financial aid. It really, again, sounds just like voter suppression 101. And it would be nice if it came back to bite the GOP, but I doubt that will be the case because individuals who are more aligned with the right will be able to figure out what they need to do in order to be able to jump through the hoops that the GOP has set up that it's hoping will hamper most of those on the left. And also, speaking of the students there on the left, well, student loan debt plan is back in the headlines. Why? Because the Supreme Court is continuing to weigh Biden's debt cancellation plan as GOP senators are really trying to take matters into their own hands, though. Watch this.
Yeah, the president says that he's canceling student loans. He's not canceling those student loans. He is going to transfer the obligation to pay them back to those who already paid their student loans back or who never took the loan out in the first place. That's $400 billion being transferred from people who willingly took them on, in some cases making as a family $250,000 a year, to someone who never went to college, never wanted a loan, or if they did, they sacrificed to pay it back. It's wrong, it's unfair.
Wow, that's really creative. I'd love to see his tax returns if he is that much into fiction. That was Republican Senator Bill Cassidy of Louisiana complaining about forgiving student loan debt. A lot of hypocritical talking points there. But first off, a breakdown of what's really going on. So Republican Senator Bill Cassidy of Louisiana, Johnny Erst of Iowa, and John Corbin of Texas, along with 36 other GOP senators, introduced a resolution on Monday to overturn Biden's debt relief program, which promises up to $20,000 of debt relief for eligible borrowers. The measure would also end the pandemic-related pause on federal student loan payments, which has been in place since March of 2020 and is set to expire this summer. The Republican senators introduced a resolution using the Congressional Review Act, which allows Congress to roll back regulations from the executive branch without needing to clear the 60-vote threshold in the Senate. That is necessary for most legislation. That's a nice little loophole. Well, Biden would very likely veto the resolution if it succeeds in both the Senate and the House, but votes would force members of his own party who have not all been in support of the student loan forgiveness program to take a public stance. The program is currently blocked, and the Supreme Court's expected to issue its ruling in late June or early July, and I'm sure the Supreme Court will find a way to ensure that we get stuck with all of the debt, make sure that we bear that burden. Always fun, Jordan.
Again, this is a uniquely American problem. We have this colossal, $1.7 trillion student debt bubble, and we're just expecting that to somehow resolve itself. The Student Loan or Student Borrower Protection Center has been warning about the reinstatement of payments causing a mass default or mass missed payment scenario because people just can't afford it. We had a massive transfer of wealth during the pandemic, and people were out of work, economic hardship increased, now we're dealing with inflation. That's why Trump paused payments, because the president has the authority to do that. And this to the president and the Secretary of Education, rather. And we acknowledged in that moment, this is a problem. This is a very serious economic problem for millions of people around the country. And now Republicans, many of whom took PPP loans, by the way, and had those forgiven, they had no problem taking that money. Never mind that I was never part of your company. I never took on the agreement to pay your employees, but somehow I had to pay the bill for you. Now that same rationale doesn't apply when it applies to when it comes to the millions of student loan borrowers. And people are just expected to suddenly deal with a huge mountain of debt because the cost of college has increased over the past 10, 15 years, hundreds, or in some cases, hundreds of percent. The wage increase since that time, I think it's around 15 to 20% overall. How are we expected to pay for this? How are people truly expected to pay for this? And they're delaying major life decisions as a result of this. If they really want to see a sustainable, vibrant economy going forward, they should allow a moderate level of cancellation here.
Absolutely, and the thing is they know, they have the research out there to show how it would benefit us all if they were to forgive debt, if they were to provide free education, but they don't want to do it, of course, because they need to maintain the classes, they need to maintain the divide, and they want to discourage us as much as possible from getting any sense of higher education, because the more educated we are, the more difficult we are to control. And it makes it more difficult for them to be able to lie to us and for us to swallow it and say it's A-okay. Yet still, as you've mentioned, Jordan, you have members of the right, you have these Republicans who were perfectly fine with debt being forgiven in various walks of life as long as it serves them, as we saw with the PPP loans, so many of which were completely and totally wiped out. Also, we know the gentleman, Bill Cassidy, as we saw, the Louisiana representative, no problem with taxpayers being burdened by the $858 billion in defense budget debt, as well as he had argued passionately for a $700 billion Wall Street bailout. The fact is that our leaders on the right have no problem whatsoever with the government picking up their tab as long as it's theirs. And as long as it helps, again, maintain that class divide and keep people in a situation where they are struggling and that they have to continue to be good worker bees as opposed to educated individuals who are recognized as contributing members of society and have an opportunity to live life to its fullest and to be able to have families and all of the other good things that individuals should have in life. But instead, the right would prefer we have bills and oppression. Then again, once again, just my thought. But I know we are wrapping up our thoughts for today, Jordan. And so I want to give you an opportunity to share your thought in terms of where people can follow you, find more about you, get to know you more.
Well, thanks for having me, Adrienne. It was great to finally talk to you for the first time. I'm on Twitter at Jordan Yule, and I have a podcast called The Insurgents. You can find on any podcast platform.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jordan. Really appreciate you joining in today. And I hope to see more of you on Twitter, even though it seems like it will be imploding after April 1. We will see. There's been so many promises at a time. But for now, you all can catch me on Twitter at Adrienne Law, Instagram at Adrienne Lawrence, and also my segment Overruled, which is on Rebel HQ. So I want to thank you all for joining me today. And also, I will be back tomorrow. And we're gonna have a good old time, believe me, because the GOP keeps it going in terms of the nonsense, but I deliver. See you then.